Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast, podcast number 219. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, May the 8th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. Pardon me. The podcast today, The Mystery of Coral Castle. Have you ever heard of Coral Castle? You probably have, but you may not know what it is. It's a castle or building or structure in South Florida built by a 100-pound Latvian immigrant. And it's truly mysterious how this thing was built. I'll tell the story of the gentleman who built it, Edward Leedskalnin, who was a 5-foot-tall, 100-pound Latvian immigrant who built this thing basically by himself using stones that weighed as much as 30 tons. How did he do it? We'll talk about that, and I'll give my theory on how Edward Leedskalnin built the Coral Castle in South Florida. Before we get to this story, this essay, I want to give you a couple pieces of information. First of all, the Jaguar update. Progress continues. Slow, steady progress continues, but we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Basically, what has to be done to the car yet before it goes to the professional shop to be stripped down and have the engine rebuilt, etc. Well, I still have to remove the wheels. Tires are off, but the wheels have to be removed. All the brake components have to be removed. There's a couple of bumper brackets that need to be removed. Wiring harnesses have to be removed. I think I got to take the drive shaft out of that thing yet. I'm not sure. Maybe that stays. Maybe that doesn't. I'm not sure. But I've had a conversation with the folks who are doing the restoration. I've gotten in line. They're very busy, so it's probably going to be a couple of months, he said, before they can get the car in. And what they will do then is sandblast it, repair the sheet metal that is rusty, seal it, prime it, and paint some of it, like the firewall, the door jambs, etc. After that, they'll give it back to me. We put it back together. Then I give it back to them one last time, and they finish the paint job. Okay. Did I say they rebuild the engine and transmission? If I didn't, well, they're doing that too. Anyway, so we're making good progress on the car. And what am I going to be doing for the 2-3 months that they're going to have that thing? Well, there's all these parts I took off. Many of them have to go back on. But before they go back on, they have to be cleaned, polished, refinished, replaced. Lots of work needs to be done. Some work has to be done to absolutely everything that's been taken off that car. And some of them just have to be replaced. And some of them I have to determine whether or not they need to be replaced or put back onto the car. So lots of work still to be done on the restoration of the 1951 Jaguar Mark 7. Stay posted. I'll give you updates as we progress. Also, I have to mention, because we're here in St. Louis, we don't have a football team. We don't have a basketball team. We have a hockey team. But St. Louis is a baseball town, and we live, breathe, eat baseball. And Cardinals are currently in first place, which is wonderful. Playing much better than they did earlier. But the big news in the baseball world that perhaps affects the Cardinals actually had to do with what happened in the California Angels organization earlier this week. They released, I should say, future Hall of Famer, former St. Louis Cardinal Albert Pujols. To say he's deteriorated with age is being kind. Pujols is hitting under 200. His wins above replacement have been in negative numbers, I think, since 2017, for a long time now. And basically, he told the Angels, look, if you're not going to play me, I don't want to play for you. And they said, hasta la vista, baby, and they released him. They still have to pay him his $30 million that they owe him for this year, which is the last year of the contract. But after he clears waivers, and he will, no team is going to pick him up and pick up that $30 million salary. So he will clear waivers. He's free to sign with any team he wants to for the major league minimum. What does that mean? Well, that means that some team can have Albert Pujols for the rest of the year at the minimum salary, which is, I think, $600,000, something like that, which in baseball terms is dirt cheap because the Angels pick up the rest of that salary. What does that mean for the St. Louis Cardinals potentially? Well, potentially that means that they could get a guy who questionably is the greatest Cardinal that ever played the game. Now, maybe Stan Musial is better, maybe not. I would say that for most people listening to the sound of my voice, he's the best baseball player that you've seen play here in St. Louis. Now, I saw Bob Gibson. I think Bob Gibson was greater than Pujols, but that's another story for another day. The greatest offensive player, let's say, or daily player, not a pitcher, okay? The greatest position player to ever play, that anyone who is a Cardinal fan has ever seen play. They could pick him up for the minimum. Now, what would he do for the Cardinals? Well, he wouldn't play first base because that's where Goldschmidt plays. He wouldn't play third base because that's where Arenado plays. We don't have a designated hitter. So he would be your off-the-bench pinch hitter from the right side and probably play DH when we play an American League team in an American League city. Will Albert Pujols do this? It's hard to say. I suspect he will. Now, I know he said that, look, I want to play every day. But the question is, who wants him to play every day? Maybe the Cleveland Indians. They're contending for the division championship. In fact, I think they're currently in first place, and their first baseman is awful. Their first baseman is hitting under 200, like Pujols. But their first baseman, and that's plural, M-E-N, first basemen, they have to have a platoon system. They've hit no home runs, 0. Now, while Pujols is hitting under 200, he's got 5 home runs for the year. The guy can still hit the ball out of the yard with regularity. He just doesn't do much else. So the Indians could sign him and play him every day. Really, outside of a team that's in the cellar, no other team is going to sign him. And I don't believe Pujols wants to play for a team that's lingering in the cellar. He wants to win. During his 11 years with the Cardinals, he was in 3 World Series. They won 2 of them in 11 years. In his 10 years in Los Angeles with the Angels, they never won a playoff game. Went to the playoffs once, lost. Never won a game. So for 10 years, a guy who was used to being a champion was an also-ran. I personally believe, and most sports writers disagree with me, but I personally believe that after he clears waivers, and if he gets no takers from a contending club to offer him a full-time position, Albert Pujols will be a St. Louis Cardinal. And I think that that would be amazing. Am I right? Am I wrong? We'll find out in probably a week to 10 days, okay? So, my essay today, The Mystery of Coral Castle. Last week I did a podcast on conspiracy theories. And is Coral Castle a conspiracy theory? No, it's not. Coral Castle is a for real thing. It's a real building. It's a real structure. It was built. It's on the National Registry list. I've been there and I've toured it. Where is it? It was in Homestead, Florida, which is just south of Miami. Homestead is one of the last cities in southern Florida before you get to the Everglades, the swamp. But Coral Castle in Homestead, Florida is one of the most amazing modern structures ever built. In fact, the castle has been compared to Stonehenge, ancient Greek temples, and The Great Pyramids of Egypt and other structures kind of like that. It's estimated that over 1,100 tons of coral rock or limestone were used to create the walls, the towers, different art objects, even carved pieces of furniture in the Coral Castle. And I've been there. I took the tour. And it's truly amazing what this guy did. If you took the tour, I know you would agree with me. But what makes this castle so amazing is not so much the structure, but that it was constructed by one man, Edward Leedskalnin, who was a 5-foot-tall, 100-pound Latvian immigrant. He quarried, fashioned, and transported these megalithic blocks of coral rock, some weighing as much as 30 tons, and setting them in place without the assistance or use of modern machinery. Now, before we talk about the Coral Castle, let's talk about the man who built it. So, as the story goes, Edward Leedskalnin was left standing at the altar by his sweet 16 fiancée back in Latvia. She claimed he was too old and too poor. Now, supposedly he was so deeply devoted and heartbroken and still in love with this young girl that he dedicated the rest of his life and decided to build this castle in honor of her in hopes that one day perhaps she'd come back to him. After leaving Latvia, Edward wandered across the United States and Canada for several years, finally settling in Florida City after being diagnosed with tuberculosis. Now, he allegedly spontaneously healed, stating that magnets helped cure his tuberculosis. Okay, so you get an idea as to what type of guy he is. Working alone, allegedly, Edward labored for 20 years, from 1920 till 1940. Building the home he originally called Rockgate Park in Florida City. Now, he began building his coral home in 1920. Then in 1936, 16 years later, for some reason, some say because a subdivision was going up in the area, for some reason, he moved his entire home 10 miles to Homestead, Florida, where he completed it, and where it still stands today as a tourist attraction. That move alone took him 3 years. Now, how Leedskalnin worked has never been truly discovered, although he did work on this thing for 20 years. That's a long time. Now, he was believed to work only at night, hidden from the eyes of the curious observers, and hidden from the Florida heat. Some suggest he used a form of anti-gravity to build the castle. Numerous designs have been suggested for this device, some using harmonic sound waves, some using magnetism, and numerous other proposals, including some introduced by extraterrestrials. Now, Leedskalnin himself claimed he knew the secrets of the ancient pyramids, and some allege he used those secrets to assemble the structure. In fact, he was quoted as saying, and I quote, "I have discovered the secrets of the pyramids and have found out how the Egyptians and the ancient builders in Peru, the Yucatan, and Asia, with only primitive tools, raised and set in place blocks of stone, weighing many tons." Now, there's even a 9-ton gate that's so perfectly balanced that it can be opened with the simple push of a finger. It closes to within a 1/4 inch on either side of the frame opening. Now, it broke back in 1986. It took 6 men and a 50-ton crane to remove and repair it. And what they found is that Ed had centered and balanced it using an iron shaft and a truck bearing. He drilled an almost perfectly round 8-foot hole for the shaft using only hand tools. Now, some say a laser-guided drill bit would be necessary to achieve such extreme precision. More on that later. But state-of-the-art adhesives were also used when reinstalling this gate. Now, Edward was certainly an interesting guy. He wrote books on topics that caused readers to wonder, who is this odd little man.